Hello, everybody, and welcome to Slow Motion Broadcasting's coverage of the XTC, the Cross Touring Cup, live here from Interlagos. Quick little facts about this circuit. Interlagos is something of a throwback circuit, built in the 1940s and updated just enough over the years to satisfy the demands of Formula One without destroying its essential character. Today, the track boasts a full calendar of events at national level, including Formula One, Stock Car Brazil, and Copa Truck are seasonal highlights on four wheels, with Superbike Brazil providing the best of the two-wheel action. And with that being said, my name is Alex Andersen. I am joined in the commentary booth by Tom Dillon with Adam Thompson in our virtual production truck. And what a track we are here for tonight, Interlagos. It's always been one of my favorite tracks, and what's your opinion on it, Tom?
I'm a big fan of Interlagos. It's one of those good old traditional Formula 1 circuits, and I always love a good traditional F1 circuit. It's always an interesting thing to have a look at. And, GT3 cars around this circuit and GT4 cars, of course, both of them being equally as entertaining to watch. We're not running the old touring car cafe chicane today, which I have to say I wish was a feature in more games that run this track. In Automobilista, I remember playing on that particular layout of the circuit, and it's so good to have a fast little chicane there. But the question really on our minds this evening, Alex, is whether Edoardo Pecorini is going to get back to winning ways after being beaten to the mark by Alex Bergstrom, this man, last week out in Long Beach.
Yeah, Alec Bergstrom, great job for himself in that race, and that closed the point of him and Edoardo Pecorini for GT3 points to just 8, actually within 8. And the thing is, we need to wonder, does Alec have the pace around Interlagos to stay in the fight? I mean, we know how fast Pecorini is in an all manner of cars, and as we take a look at what Bergstrom's doing out on the track, we just have to wonder what he can do to try and keep pace with Edoardo.
And, we're going to do a track follow-through, Alex, on board with the driver's eye of Alec Bergstrom as he heads down into turn 1. The car, 140 mile an hour. He'll probably get closer to 160 as he heads down into the braking zone to turn 1. 155 mile an hour, spot the braking point, about the 50-meter board. You want to be wide to the left-hand side here. Second gear, dip the car in, use a lot of curb through both of the center S's before using all of the traction control you can to just hook the car around on this curb as well. And then open up the car, heading down the back straight. Notice how in the sim he's not particularly using all of the track on the right-hand side there, as it makes it slightly faster in sim racing. And the left-hander is going to ease the car through second gear and just run it out down to the right-hander. And this is such a fast corner. It's uphill, ever so slightly blind. Third gear, quick couple of shifts down, and then just keep the car tight again and ease it out on the exit. Use all the curbs, set yourself up for the next hairpin. And this time he's running all the curb in second gear and keeps the car tight for the second hairpin. And runs it out straight onto the curb for the exit. And then it's much of the same again, down into second gear and just ease the car out. Now here, is it flat or is it not? In a GT3 car, probably not. He's just going to maybe have a hint of a lift through here. Set himself up for the final corner at Interlagos, all the way onto the AstroTurf on the right hand side. Second gear, open the car up once again. A slight tap of oversteer as he opens it up. And you can see now, running to the line. This is where the lap is all but done. You still have to think about your line, and notice how he's keeping all the way to the left hand side. You wouldn't do this in the real world, but in the sim you can afford to. It's ever so slightly faster, the tune of about 2,000th of a second. Bergstrom isn't going to improve, but in fact he is, and he's going to go into pole position. So that's a lap time with 5 minutes to go. That is good enough for pole position.
As we take a look at Robert Schwenkler, who currently is in the lead for the GT4 cars, and we've already established that they are a lot slower than the GT4 cars. And judging off the gap times, I'm going with around maybe 5-6 seconds slower than the average GT4 lap time. I could be wrong on that, but Paul Mikolajczyk is only 1/10 of a second behind Rob there. So, I mean, we already know how close of a race how close of a race it's going to be in the GT3 class, but it looks like it might be even closer in the GT4s. And actually, it does look like it is an 8-second gap to the GT3 time. So apologies for that.
And yes, I had the same on my screen there, and I was going to say 4 seconds isn't 5 seconds isn't too consequential when it comes to a track like Interlagos. Well, in fact, no, it's the opposite. It is quite consequential when you think about a track like Interlagos. But yes, about 8 seconds, 140. Robert Schwenkler has taken his main championship rival at the moment, as we see Jaden Darling head to the line. I'm not sure if this is a lap or not. It looks like it is 130, or not, sorry, 136.1. So had an issue there. But yes, Robert Schwenkler, of course, having not much company at the top of the standings. If this continues, Adam Thompson is actually on production tonight rather than racing. He won the first race and the last race in Long Beach, and now it looks like Robert Schwenkler, who won in Imola in Adam's absence, is going to have a bit of an opportunity here to claw that gap back at the top of the championship.
And I do want to take a look at Michael Darling there in third place for the GT4 class. And that driver in those big, heavy GT4 cars that are closer to really stock cars with less horsepower. I mean, with how heavy they are and how hard they are to get around circuits. I mean, Michael Darling, we know how fast he is, but the thing is, he have the consistency. He has been involved in a few incidents, I do believe, and it has hindered him, but he's really fast. It's just, does he have the consistency to try and keep up with the leaders?
Well, you'd hope so. It's a 40-minute race here. It's a 45-minute race with Josh Clogg really all onto the AstroTurf there. And really quite a quirk of the game, because you would not dream of doing that in real life. You'd have a one-way ticket to the barrier. It looks like actually Josh overcommitted to the AstroTurf there, and it sort of hindered his lap time slightly. We'll have to see as he comes to the line. It's not going to be pole position, we can say that for sure, and it probably won't be him bumping up the order at all. 133.7 is 132.6 it says on the overlay, so he has bumped up the order slightly into third. As well, you can always trust two timing screens to tell you two completely different things, can't you, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. And as we take a look at the points for these are for the GT3 class, Eduardo Pecorini, the dominant road course driver, currently leads with 70 points. Alec Bergstrom, though, is closing the gap there in second with 62 points. Then it's Josh Clogg in third with 54 points, Bobby Ross in fourth, Chad Seep in fifth, Jake Ham in sixth, Matthew Plaisance in seventh, Jaden Darling in eighth, Kerry Cantera in ninth, Frank Appa in 10th, Eric Whitner in 11th, Robbie Shin in 12th, Braden Maling in 13th, I believe that. If I have that incorrect, I do apologize. Wesley Jeanette in 14th, Patrick Cobb in 15th, James Thurston in 16th, Andrew Korostecki in 17th, and Ashley Lyle in 18th. Both of those bottom two have yet to score any points this season. And Tom, if we can get that up, I'll let you take us through the GT4 points.
And so it's Adam Thompson who leads in the GT4 class. So the question is for how long, as I hear an exclaim in my ear, an exclamation from Adam in my ear, as Michael Darling is in second position, though the real chance that he can actually overtake Adam on this occasion. Robert Schwenkler will also be looking to overtake Adam Thompson, as it looks like he might just be able to do so with Adam's absence, and presumably Adam's absence for the majority of the season. James Keir, sir, is in third position. He's in fourth position, I apologise. We've Grant Turner in fourth, and they are having a right scrap for fourth position, 43 and 42 points. Glenn McTavish is a little bit further back at this stage. He's got 34 points, so he's about 8 points down. And then in seventh, it's Mika Olachik, Rob Neville. We're actually going to the grid. I apologise. As Alec Bergstrom is on pole position, Alex.
Yeah, Alec Bergstrom takes pole from Eduardo Pecorini here tonight by over a tenth and a half, just under 0.2 of a second. That's a pretty big gap for these two drivers. Josh Clogg ends up in third with Kerry Cantera in fourth, Bobby Ross in fifth, Devin Bratcher in what I believe is his first start in sixth, Eric Whitner in seventh, Frank Appa in eighth, Chad Seep in ninth, Patrick Cobb in 10th, Jaden Darling in 11th, Robbie Shin in 12th, and I do believe that Oh, there we go. As we move down the order, on pole for the GT4 class, that's going to go to Robert Schwenkler there. Paul Mikolajczyk in second. Michael Dalling, the current points leader, but Rob is only 3 points behind him there. He's going to have to make up 2 positions to try and hold that lead. Jerry DiPiero in 16th, 4th in class. Grant Turner 17th. Glenn McTavish in 18th. Rob Neville in 19th. And Jimmy Howitt in 20th, and I do believe that does round out the field. And with that being said, as these cars, we only have about 20 seconds left on the grid as these cars get ready to go racing. We are in for a pretty good race here tonight, I would say, Tom.
We should be. GT4 is probably going to be a little bit more of an attritional affair. As we see a smaller field, it's probably going to be a race, as we've seen most of the time throughout this championship, a race that's largely decided through who's got the better pit stop strategy. And when they do come into the pits, we're expecting a single stop today, as the tank capacity is limited to 30%. As for GT3, a lot more potential for things to go wrong. 12 drivers in that category, and a few drivers who are fairly evenly paced, trying to get their dive their way through the field. Bergstrom, of course, on pole position, looking for a real battle with Edoardo Pecorini here, as it seemed in the first couple of rounds that Edoardo Pecorini was going to be virtually unmatched. But Alex Bergstrom really showing here in Interlagos that might not be the case.
Yeah, and these guys, we know how quick these guys are, and Ashley in chat there. Hello, my friend. How are you doing tonight? Thanks for checking in and seeing how we're doing up here. And thanks for watching. And Tom, I will give it to you for the race start. And let's get ready to see these guys go at it.
And well, they're going to wait for the green flag to fly. It's Bergstrom on pole position. Pecorini is going to be looking to make up positions very early on indeed, because this is going to be one of those things that can go and decide the championship, especially if these two trip over each other. The safety car is into the pits, and look at the tight line they're taking down into turn 1 here. The green flag is going to fly any moment here in XTC for the race at Interlagos. The first time we're on the South American continent, and the race has got underway here. There's immediately one of the Mercedes trying to make up positions down into turn 1, and Josh Clogg just nicely hiding in there with Bergstrom, trying to get ahead of Edoardo Pecorini. He makes a little bit of a mistake, and it is Bergstrom who leads into turn 1. Josh Clogg trying to make some moves on Edoardo Pecorini ahead, but not quite going to be. It's a much more formation flying in GT4 as Robert Schwenkler leads the way. Darling, however, is going to try and make up positions on the 01 GT4 just ahead of him, the McLaren, and at the moment he's not quite able to do so. In fact, it looks like he's going to have some attacks from behind to deal with. He gets through into second position. Grant Turner now trying to attack Dolling, as Dolling has made a little bit of a mistake and has been re-overtaken. Grant Turner really trying to just hang on in there and get through. Here he goes, thinks about it, but it's a bit too tight, that corner. It was getting tasty for a moment there, Alex.
These guys, it looks like everybody is able to go through the first lap so far cleanly. It's a car off, I think.
Yep, that's Grant Turner who spun around, and I'm not too sure what happened there. No doubt we'll get a replay, as he's down into 5th position in class. But here's what happened with Grant Turner. Fancy slow motion, as I suppose we are slow motion broadcasting. But as we go up to Grant Turner, what did happen here? And it looks like he's just dropped it on the grass. And we'll just get a secondary angle on that, as we see Grant Turner heading through the right-hander, and he's just dropped it on the grass. And I think actually what happened there, he might have got onto the brakes a little bit too early, as it sent him round, a little bit too late I should say. It sent him round, but I was trying to attack the car ahead. And well, we see Alex Bergstrom leading the way still. Edoardo Pecorini not quite able to catch up to him at this stage. Not the easiest of times for Pecorini. Of course, anyone else would usually take second in a race. Pecorini really wanting to make up for that poor result last week, as we're seeing actually an overtake. This is Michael Dillon, and it's on the number 1 McLaren, and it was rather less of an overtake and more of a mistake from the McLaren that let Dillon through, and now he's got a little bit of breathing room to that McLaren behind, and it's going to allow him to try and push the leader, Robert Schwenkler, here. Now, you asked in the qualifying session, Alex, whether Dillon could just have the pace to keep up with the leaders, and he clearly can keep up with the top 3, but the question is, do you think he's now got the pace to chase after Schwenkler?
I mean, if he can keep up the pace that he has right now, I think he definitely has a decent shot here. I mean, these GT4 cars, how heavy they are, he's going to get some nice drafting down the straights here, and that's going to allow him to at least have a few shots to try and get around Schwenkler. He just needs to be smart with it to try and not total his car.
Well, absolutely. As we see Bobby Ross close in on Kerry Cantera. And he's really had a decent season, Bobby Ross. Always in the midfield, and he thinks about to move around the outside. Cantera in the 3-3-3 tries to go a little bit defensive. It wasn't so needed in the end, just perhaps tempted Bobby out of the move. Now, though, he's got a fair bit of slipstream in the Mercedes. German power out of that car. So a pretty good engine indeed. Now to the outside he goes. Is it going to be a repeat of Hamilton and Verstappen in 2021? It looks like it's not, except it's 2 Mercedes this time. And Bobby Ross can't quite find the room on the outside. He's going to try the switchback though, and he's still on the outside. Here he goes, Bobby Ross. He switches. It's a dummy move from Bobby Ross. Has he got the room on the inside? He hasn't quite. The braking performance wasn't there. And now who's that in the background? It's Eric Whitner trying to make a move. Eric Whitner's outbroke himself a little bit and just about avoids the rear of Bobby Ross in the number 33. Now he sticks a nose in and has to back out of it once more. Bobby Ross was looking really, really racy there, and he wasn't quite able to get through.
Looks like he's just gonna have to wait in line for a better shot here as we take a look at
Schwenkler.
I'm not quite sure who that is. Need to figure that out. That I believe that was Robbie Shin there in that McLaren. I could be wrong on that. I still dealing with a bit of issues on my end. Oh, there we go. That should make it a little bit better. There's Robbie Shin in his Ferrari chasing down a GT4 Porsche. I want to say that's a 78 car in front of him.
Oh,
it looks like he's just minding his business in 11.
He's got a lot of damage.
Yeah, he has a little bit of wing damage there. Not sure what could have happened to him.
Well, here's what's happened, Alex, as we head down into turn 1. Robbie Shin looks like he's, I wanted to say hooked it on the curb, but he hasn't. No, he's gone into the grass. And we know in iRacing, that grass, despite being a point of contention in recent weeks, on corners like that grass is not something you want to be touching. And it's just sent him round as Robbie Shin, and it looks like he's going to stay out for the time being, which is an interesting call. His lap time previously was a 150, of course, losing 18 seconds to his fellow GT3 cars, and I'm surprised that Robbie Shin hasn't been given a black and orange technical flag there.
It looks like he has not. Well, I'm going to refer to it as to what I usually refer to it as, the meatball flag, which is little black flag with a little orange, it's an orange circle in the middle of it, but I call it a meatball, and I know a lot of others do, and he has not gotten that to require him to come into the pits to fix that. So obviously not race-ending damage, but that definitely is going to hinder the turning power on that car, as Pecorini still tries to chase down Bergstrom down the front straightaway. He's going to have a bit of draft down here as they head to the final couple of kinks before the main straight. You can see the pit road entry line just there, and as well as Josh Clogg in the background here to chase up the hill towards turn 1. Pecorini has been slowly knocking time out of that gap. Slowly but surely, Pecorini is closing it. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this over time, but I think the main thing is that Bergstrom definitely has more pace in Sector 1 and Sector 2 in the earlier sectors, but Pecorini just has that exit speed, I think, in that BMW to keep up to the later sectors.
As we do see Edoardo Pecorini trying to make the moves. Here's Bobby Ross. He's going to have a second bite at the cherry. He thinks against it in the end. He was certainly looking very racy there, was Bobby Ross. He's still stuck behind Gary Cantera. Josh Clogg just down the road, about to the tune of about 4.3 seconds at the moment. You can see Josh Clogg just for a brief moment there in the top of your picture in the Mercedes. And a Mercedes-dominated field at the moment. But here's on board with Bobby Ross, still hounding Kerry Cantera, and he still can't get through. It looks like he just hasn't got the pace in Sector 2, Alex.
Yeah, and I mean, even with that exit speed from that powerful Mercedes, these cars are equal right here, so he just has to try and focus up there. It looks like Whitner has knocked down time on Bobby as well, as we can see if we can switch to the gaps between these two. And it looks like Bobby just has the pace in the earlier sectors. Yeah, you can see the times down there. It looks like Cantera's 2/10 slower in the first sector, but then knocks 3/10 out of that gap in the middle sectors, and then loses a little bit in the fourth sector here to Bobby Ross. So, I mean, it's all Bobby really is really good in the later sectors. It's just those two middle technical sectors. It looks like that's just really what's halting his assault here on Kerry Cantera. As he gets a good exit speed here. I don't know. I think this could be the lap.
I'm not too sure, because the issue with Bobby Ross is his car has got a heap load of straight line speed, and it's just costing him in that second and third sector. You can see there into that particular corner, it was just not really helping him a great deal, as he's just a little bit too far back. It's a little bit too tight of a corner. He's going to be hoping for a move into turn one. Here's Grant Turner. He's trying to attack Neville just ahead, and we'll see what his setup is looking like as they roar down into turn one. The two Porsches again taking that really tight line down the pitch straight, and it appears that you're just going to need to have a rocket out of that final corner in order to get this move done, as down into that left-hander, as we've proven with Bobby Ross, just seems to be a difficult ask. Here we go though, around the outside. Grant Turner, he might have a go into the left-hander.
Yeah, he's going to get a nice draft run down this back straightaway here. You can see him just ever so slightly closing that gap there. Now into turn 5, I believe that is. Tries to outbrake. Gets a nice turn on the inside, but it looks like he doesn't get a good turn-off exit. Neville tries to go back out on the inside. Turner has to give him room down there. They're going to go side by side up into the technical sectors here, and it looks like Neville's going to relent that position, and Grant Turner takes, I believe, that's 6th place overall in the GT4 class. A great move by him into that corner, but here we go. Bobby Ross now has good speed here down this back straightaway. He looks to the outside here, and he gets to the outside. He gets his nose there. These two cars are side by side here. Cantera's going to have the preferred line here, but Bobby Ross might get a better exit here, as it looks like Cantera jumps into the corner. Bobby Ross tries to get a better exit, but he's still stuck behind that 333 car. Looks like he tries to get to the outside now. Ooh, Cantera almost forces him onto the grass. He's still trying to make that move. I don't know if Bobby Ross is going to be very happy about that one.
It was just hard fair racing, in my opinion. There's only a slight bit of contact, and it's a corner where you shouldn't really be going side by side anyway, so really just good racing. Both of them. Oh, there's a mistake from Cantera, and it's finally happened for Bobby Ross. He's got through into 4th position. Whitner actually got caught up in that mistake from Cantera. He's now been passed by Bratcher, and now Whitner, really, who was looking to capitalise on the two battling, hasn't quite had the rub of the green there. Here's what happened with Whitner, and it looks like he's just been on the rejoin, has just been a little bit hampered, and it's cost him a little bit of damage as well. You can see visibly the Porsche just struggling a little bit with oversteer on the exit of the corners. It looks like that front left might just be in a little bit of bother. Here's a slow motion replay on board with the Porsche, and just around the outside.
See Bobby Ross blink there, and then I would say the stewards are going to have a look at that. I'm not sure if him cutting back across the track like that, Cantera that being, not sure if that's from oversteer trying to save the car, or if that's just blatantly turning right to try and keep it on track. But I mean, very unfortunate for Whitner, who is now 1.8 seconds back even from Bratcher, and it's just heartbreaking. I mean, he was gonna have such a good day, I thought, and I mean, he had a shot to pass all these guys and get up into P4, and it's just unfortunate for him to fall back now to 7th here.
But the important thing to note is as well, we saw that Cantera got a little bit of damage from that contact as well. So that's going to be hampering Cantera just as much as it is Whitner. Here's a battle at the back of the field between Jaden Darling and Patrick Cobb. Not any doing there at the moment.
Yeah, these guys, they are still pretty close together. They're within a second, which that's enough for drafting range for Patrick Cobb there. But for now, he's just going to have to wait behind there and So you take a look at another look at Devin Bratcher, who's riding in line behind Kerry Cantera as they go by the final corner that you have to brake for on this circuit and into the fast left-handers that make up the main straightaway here. This is where Bratcher, if Cantera doesn't get a good draft run off Bobby Ross, this could be Bratcher's opportunity. If he gets a good run, they're going to go down the hill and then right back up it. And we see Bobby Ross leading this group of cars. Bratcher gets pretty close, but he's not close enough to make a move down into turn number 1 there. And it looks like Cantera is still going to hold on to that spot. And as we take a look at Paul Mikolajczyk, who is caught up to Michael Dalling there in second. And Dalling has seemed to lose a bit of time to Schwenkler there up in front of him. So, I mean, Dalling, he has the consistency right now to maintain second position pace there, and he's doing a really good job at it, but doesn't look like any time being gained towards Robert Schwenkler, and if he isn't careful, Paul Mikolajczyk could have a go at him.
Just want to go to the YouTube chat for a moment to be quite behind on our messages, actually. As Tyler Coates says, why isn't Princess Adam racing? Afraid he's going to lose, and... well, I'm sure he is, actually. Adam leading the championship, very scared. And
he's hanging out in our virtual production trailer running cameras for us, so unfortunate, but yeah, I'm not sure how long he's not going to be able to race for there, but as we're looking at Alec Bergstrom right now, who it looks like has pulled away from Edoardo Pecorini just in the slightest little bit. Looks like Pecorini still has the straight line speed and the draft to keep up, but so far Bergstrom is maintaining that gap, and so far it looks like he's still increasing it.
Absolutely, as Alex Bergstrom just holding on at the moment. 7/10 of a second is the gap between him and Edoardo Pecorini. Edoardo just going along at the moment, really trying his hand at getting through and securing the championship lead. If I'm not mistaken, there is a drop week in this championship, which means that the worst results will be excluded from the championship results, and that might play into Eduardo's favour here, as he had that poor weekend at Long Beach, relatively speaking, as we see lap traffic really getting in the way, and lap traffic really allowing Edoardo Pecorini to have a go here, and actually it's really going to hamper Bergstrom, who's now having to try and trip over some GT4 traffic. 0.3 of a second, he's gained 0.4 in this sequence of corners. Edoardo Pecorini suddenly is right on the bumper of the man he's trying to overtake. Alec Bergstrom must feel so hard done by here. That gaggle of GT4 cars has just caught them at all the wrong time. Now, let's see, has that BMW got the same straight line speed or even better straight line speed than that Mercedes?
I think definitely he's going to have an increased top speed from the draft here as well down this main straightaway. I think if there's any time for Pecorini to be able to make a move, it's going to be now. Is actually to deny that. Bergstrom enters the pit lane, which I'm not sure. I mean, I think that means the GT3 cars may have to make 2 stops here, driving for 45 continuous minutes, as Josh Clogg and Kerry Cantera are also now into the pit lane. So to completely negate the effect of the draft and to negate the effect of the hindrance that the GT4 cars caused, definitely I would say a pretty smart move from Alec Bergstrom, especially in that first pit stall, to get out quickly.
Absolutely, going for the undercuts to try and extend that advantage a little bit more. The question is he going to come out into a pocket of clear air here? And it looks like Bergstrom actually might not. He's going to struggle with the Mercedes ahead of him. And the question is, can he just either get through this traffic quickly enough, or can he try and avoid being held up by him too much? That's going to be the question now for Alec Bergstrom, as he's got Seep ahead of him, Clog behind him, and he's really going to have to try and get through. We're not expecting them to take tyres here, which is something to note, and Bergstrom immediately goes down the inside, and Bergstrom's going to get through, and rather helpfully, Seep doesn't get in the way too much. 2.9 seconds is the gap to Appa ahead. Edoardo Pecorini has a little bit of breathing room now. 10 seconds to Bobby Ross behind, and if I was Edoardo Pecorini, I'd be pitting as soon as possible. 25 minutes to go in this race. Just mirror what the guy behind you is doing. It looks
and
like
these
that's what he's going
guys
to do.
probably, as Pecorini pulls into the pits, these guys, I don't believe they are going to be taking tires here, so it's just going to be a fuel and go stop for Pecorini, and we really have to keep an eye on where he comes out relative to Bergstrom there as Bobby Ross stays out, but Bratcher is now into the pit lane, and Bobby Ross is going to take the provisional lead of this race. As you can see, Eduardo Pecorini right there in the 20-second pit stall there. You can see that yellow BMWs. Here's Alec Bergstrom now coming down the front straightaway. It looks like Pecorini still sitting in his pit stall, and that is going to easily clear Bergstrom for the lead of this race, as Pecorini is now going to fall behind, and Bergstrom has now really increased that gap back up to what it was and more, as it looks like it's now over 2 seconds between these two race cars. So, I mean, a great job from Bergstrom with the undercut, and now I would say Eduardo Pecorini has some work to do.
Certainly having some work to do. Eduardo Pecorini is 9/10 of a second up to Josh Clogg, and then a further gap to Bergstrom. So it proves that traffic really didn't harm Bergstrom at all, and it's actually played into his advantage having that one lap undercut. As it's unusual that, come to think of it, having the one lap undercut, because assuming that they don't take tyres here in this league, he hasn't actually had much of a tangible advantage apart from running on heavier fuel, which actually isn't an advantage for Alec Bergstrom. So perhaps he was just able to get in and get out a little bit sooner.
But I would say that, I mean, we know Pecorini did have a bit of traffic there, but, and then Bergstrom was clear there. He was clear of any traffic, and I mean, with that, I mean, Bergstrom, he has really good pace, and he has been able to stay ahead of Eduardo Pecorini there. And I mean, you were mentioning how these guys, they aren't taking tires, but I think a part of that could be, I mean, just sitting in your box for, I mean, maybe 10 to 15 seconds. That's going to cool the tires off quite a bit. Yeah, it looks like it's around 14 seconds for Bergstrom. Pecorini did have an 8/10 longer stop, though. I mean, and just sitting in your box for 14 seconds, that's going to allow the tires to get so much time to cool off that you can go out and just be ever so slightly faster than your opponent on tires that have been continuously running for 16 minutes without any brakes. So I would say that's a part of it on Bergstrom's outlap there, which allowed him to catch up to Pecorini so well. And I mean, the traffic did also have a major part to play into it, as well, as it looks like Bergstrom is going to have a bit of more traffic there with that Porsche. That's the 39 car of Grant Turner.
And getting through it quite nicely. Josh Clogg seems to be having a little bit of a harder time. That Pecorini is going to actually be held up. Oh, there's a collision between the Porsche and the Mercedes, and Josh Clogg is just on the turn, and I think the GT4 actually just kept his nose in there, which was a little bit unfavourable for Josh Clogg. It looks like a racing incident at first glance, but just GT4s and GT3s tripping over each other, and that's not something you want to see. But if Josh Clogg has got a little bit of traffic, then a little bit of damage, then that's going to show in his pace. Here is the incident again in wonderful slow motion, as we're actually not on board, but following along the cameras with the Porsche. Rob Neville in the number 87. He was running in 6th in class. Down into the right-hander, you can see just ahead there was Alec Bergstrom essentially doing the same manoeuvre, but more successfully on the Porsche just ahead. And then here's Rob trying to turn into the corner whilst also getting out the way, and actually on second thought it looks like absolutely it is the fault of the lapping Josh Clogg, as Rob was alongside all the way through. And I think what's happened, as someone who is used to driving in higher class race cars on the sim compared to and having to lap traffic fairly regularly, Josh just hasn't judged how far alongside the Porsche was.
And I mean, even with no lap traffic, I mean, Josh Clogg, I'm not saying he's slower than Pecorini because he is able to match pace, but if Pecorini really wants to catch up to Bergstrom here, he does have another Mercedes obstacle in the way here, that being Josh Clogg in the number 199 machine. And Pecorini, he has to deal with this quickly, and I would say he will get a shot here on this main straightaway. If he can get a good exit, it looks like he does get a decent one. Clogg's may have been better, but Pecorini, if he can get a nice draft down this main straightaway here, he could have a shot down into turn number 1. It's not looking like it's enough right now, as there's the gap closing. You can see that Mercedes getting closer and closer to this BMW here, and it looks like it is not close enough. Pecorini, ooh, he tries, he thinks about it, he's not able to get close enough, but he is going to get a good exit, and he could maybe make a move down this back straightaway here. And it looks like he's going to get a nice draft. It looks like Clog elects to defend the inside, as Pecorini still right on his back bumper to get the draft. Now Pecorini pulls the outside, side by side into turn number 4 here. They're going to maintain side by side on exit. Pecorini not giving an inch there. And it looks like Clog, he's going to have the non-preferred line here into turn 6 here. Pecorini's going to get his nose out front. Clog still fighting back on the outside. And it looks like Clog, fantastic fight from himself, and he's going to maintain that spot. Pecorini is still going to have to settle for 3rd at the moment. And just look at how much that increased the gap between 1st and 2nd. I mean, Bergstrom pulled out an entire second, it looked like. I mean, that could have been something just on mine, but now a battle again into turn 4 between Glenn McTavish and Grant Turner. Looks like McTavish easily ends up with the position, but he ends up running off-road, and now these guys are 3 wide with a GT3 car. I'm not sure who that was, but they had to just go through a sandwich of Porsches to try and catch back up, and now, yeah, it looks like Bergstrom did extend that lead by an entire second off of that battle alone, and it really shows you how quickly Pecorini has to deal with this car in front of him if he wants to try and catch back up to Bergstrom.
It is really mission critical at the moment for Edoardo Pecorini, as time is running out. We've only got about 17.5 minutes to go in this race, which isn't a great deal of time at all. And I can tell you, actually, on the note of the 2 GT4s and the Mercedes trying to dive down the inside, I've been in that situation before in a race on R-Factor 2, and a similar situation anyway. Let's just say it ended with a couple of GT3s spun around and someone not very happy at me, but it would have been a scary moment for the Mercedes, and I'm surprised actually he didn't back out of it. It showed a great deal of commitment and guts. But Pecorini now, 0.3 of a second, has the pace on what we assume is the wounded Clog after having that small incident with the Porsche, and something that will probably be reported and dealt with after the race by the stewards. But after having that incident with the Porsche, he's probably carrying a little bit of damage. I'd be surprised how extensive this damage model is if that wasn't the case. Pecorini's going to have a look to the inside here, too fast of a corner, and he's just going to have to get into the slipstream.
And you can see the gap off that bumper cover as they come back onto the main straight. It looks like Pecorini caught the grass a little bit there. And that's going to really hinder his exit speed down this front straightaway, it's going to allow Clog to end up with a net gain, even with Pecorini having the draft down this front straightaway. So Pecorini, he still has some work to do here, and he's just not been close enough, but he could maybe get close enough down the back straight into turn 4 again, as these 2 GT4 cars, Glenn McTavish and Grant Turner, are still battling out for 16th overall. That's P5 in class. And it looks like as they head out of the second hairpin and into the final full throttle section before the front straightaway, looks like McTavish still dealing with it. And we're going to go through the field here as we take a look back to our leader, Alec Bergstrom. Has had a pretty flawless race up there. Number 66 car got way out ahead of Edoardo Pecorini off of pit stalls, and he has been cruising up in the lead ever since. To Josh Clog in second, Tom.
Josh Clog still holding off Pecorini, and it's still such a close battle. Actually, Pecorini's going to have a look now, and he thinks against it once more. The championship leader really having a difficult time. More oversteer, stuck in the dirty air as well. There's not a great deal of it in GT3 cars, but it can play a factor, that's for sure. Clog looking so unnatural on that line on the AstroTurf, as Robbie Shins actually got past the other Cobb. Well, the Cobb, Clog and Cobb being 2 things that completely bamboozling my brain at this stage. But Pecorini, Dill, yet another lap in, holding on to this one, or hanging on there.
Yeah, and Pecorini, I mean, he's still just hanging behind Josh Clog there in third, but Bobby Ross back here in fourth. We haven't talked about him that much. He was involved in a gaggle of cars earlier, and he has ended up with the better of it after getting around Kerry Cantera. A pretty great race from himself so far, but just behind him, the man we mentioned earlier, Kerry Cantera, who was battling with Bobby Ross earlier for third, I believe it was, and he has ended up, or excuse me, no, it was for fourth, and he has ended up with one position worse, but still a top 5 currently for himself. Nothing to be ashamed of in that 333 car.
Absolutely nothing. He's had to come through a little bit of adversity, hasn't he, Kerry Cantera? So going along fairly nicely. Chad Seep is someone who's been a little bit out of it. He hasn't particularly been driving poorly. He's just been maybe missing a little bit of pace, which is absolutely fine compared to the top 5. 6th position, still a good haul of points, and sometimes it just isn't your day. You know, perhaps you haven't got the setup quite right, as we see Frank Capper, someone who perhaps is much of the same, trying to chase down Chad Seep at the moment, but just having a little bit of a difficult time of it. And probably much of the same story for Bratcher. He's actually lost a couple of positions. And another thing to note about Seep and Apper, now we've got this view of the positions, is that 3 gained for Seep, 1 gained for Apper. If you can improve on your qualifying position, that surely has to be a pretty decent day.
Yeah, so we take a look 1 position behind him, Robbie Shin there, as he still has to deal with some lap traffic there. 3 wide again between battling GT4 cars. That is still Glenn McTavish and Grant Turner going at it. And Robbie Shin got around those 2 pretty quickly. He has had a pretty tame race for himself, as has Patrick Cobb back here in 10th. He has 2 battling GT4 cars right in front of him. If I were him, I'd just have a bucket of popcorn and watch this, because it's probably very entertaining to watch from the cockpit of that BMW here, as it looks like he does have to slow down a little bit to give these guys a bit of leeway here. But just behind him, while he tries to get through that, Jaden Darling hasn't had the best race for himself, but he's still making do with what he has been dealt here. And it's like more GT4 cars just in the background of him. That was the 87 car of Robert Neville. But into the GT4 class, your current leader, and he has been leading all race, Robert Schwenkler. I do believe he got pole for the GT4 class, and he's been up here ever since, doing a great job in that 235 car.
He was under pressure, Robert Schwenkler, actually, ever so slightly earlier on in this race, but he led into turn 1, and he's led throughout the rest of this race. By my reckoning, barring checking who's actually got the fastest lap here, this would constitute a grand slam in the GT4 class for Robert Schwenkler. And I will have to see if I can find the fastest lap, but surely with his pace, it's got to be him. Yeah,
and just behind him, I'm gonna hope.
I can tell you it is him. So Robert Schwenkler is on for the grand slam here, Alex.
Yeah, and he has been doing a great job up here, but currently P3 in the podium places is Paul Mikolajczyk. Had a shot at passing Michael Dalling earlier, but currently still maintains a podium position here. He's done a great job just running a nice, quiet, consistent race back there in the number 01 McLaren. And just behind him, Jerry DiPiero, another driver we haven't talked that much about in that BMW. One of the only GT4 BMWs, I think. And he's doing a great job being the 1 car representing that team in the GT4 class, currently running inside the top 5 in 4th position.
Absolutely. Glenn McTavish, one of the few Aston Martins in the GT4 class. And he's going along fairly leisurely. 8 seconds down on the car ahead of him. Though sometimes it's okay to run in no man's land. I say run in no man's land. He needs to look over his shoulder because he's got a Porsche of Turner just behind him. 1.3 seconds. You can see on the previous lap, Neville actually took a second out of Turner. And I appreciate I was looking in the wrong direction there. We're talking about McTavish versus Turner. And as we see Turner actually into the pits. So McTavish now well and truly into no man's land. He's got a bit of GT3 traffic just behind him, though I'm sure he'll be looking to chase that down. Rob Neville's going to assume 6th position. He was struggling with that incident, wasn't he? And I imagine has got a little bit of damage from being essentially taken out by Josh Clog. By the way, Josh Clog into the pits. Eduardo Pecorini reassumes his place in 2nd position.
And that is going to start the second green flag pit cycle for these GT4 cars. And just like how fast Bergstrom's outlap was to get a nice gap on Pecorini and Clog, you gotta wonder, will Clog end up being able to pull off the same thing here as he exits the pit lane with a Porsche right in front of him? And that, not sure who that is. I think that's Grant. Yes, that is Grant Turner in front of him, and he needs to deal with this quickly, get a nice outlap, and he could make up a pretty big deal of time on Bergstrom when those two cars end up coming into the pit lane. But looks like Bergstrom almost going into the final left-hander. He's very close to it here as we see him coming through the second to last, or really the last corner you have to brake for on this circuit here. He's going to head down the longest straightaway. Now we're going to have to see if he or Eduardo Pecorini elects to come into the pit lane this lap. Looks like Frank Appa pitted that lap with Josh Clog as well. Looks like he's following the white line. He might be thinking about it here. And yes, he will be. Alec Bergstrom into the pits for the second and final time tonight. Pecorini once again elects to stay out another lap. Now we have to see where Josh Clog is in the number 199 car. He's out of the final corner and down the front straightaway. We have to see where it looks like Bergstrom still stopped in his pit stall. There he is in the number 23 stall. You can see him on the right side of your screen. He did have to back up a little bit for missing his pit stall, so Clog could end up with a pretty big shot at trying to overtake here. He's breaking into turn number 1. Bergstrom is on the pit exit line now, and it looks like Bergstrom is going to maintain the lead here, but I would say the gap has been knocked down quite a bit. It was around 3.5 seconds. Now it's under 2.7 as they head towards turn 4.
That is going to play into the hands of Eduardo Pecorini, who is going to need to pit soon enough. I was expecting one stop here, given the notes I was reading, but actually looking at the maths, it's going to be certainly, obviously, the 2 stops. I don't think Pecorini will be able to somehow pull a blinder and get to the end here. He will have to pit, surely. And that begs the question, do you take ties? If you know you have to make 2 stops, is it worth, just towards the end of this race, he's got another 10 minutes to go here, so we won't be taking a full fuel tank either, will Eduardo Pecorini. Neither will have the people behind him with only 10 minutes to go in the race. The fuel tank, by my reckoning, should be able to go about 18 minutes here, assuming that it's 30%, and a normal fuel tank could go about 60 minutes, as Eduardo Pecorini stays out one more. He's got the fastest lap in the GT3 field by 0.7 of a second. So really, if he can just use this clean air that he's got and use the lighter fuel tank that he's also currently running, given the fact that he's close to a pit stop, then he should be pulling out a bit of a gap to Alec Bergstrom here. You can see 20 seconds is the gap. I'm not too sure what the pit delta is, Alex, but that seems pretty healthy, and it looks like it's slightly extending for Pecorini.
Yeah, and pit stop time last time for Pecorini was a 14.8 second stop there. So I think Pecorini could be trying to run the tank until it's empty to try and maintain as the least amount of time in his pit stall as possible here in that BMW. So it looks like he might be just trying to run the tank as far down as he can. That way he can spend the least amount of time possible in his pit stall, which would be a pretty good time. And there's the pit lane time overall. Overall, it looked like Bergstrom last time was 2 seconds faster, and I think Pecorini is looking to make up the gap on pit stops yet again here. We're going to have to see if he comes in the pits this lap. He's a little bit low compared to other times. Looks like he ducks below the white lines. I think this might be the lap. Yes, it will be. Eduardo Pecorini into the pits. Now we have to keep an eye out for Bergstrom. The gap around 21 seconds as Pecorini throws on his pit limiter and hauls down towards his pit stall there. He's the second one behind 23 in the 20-second stall there. Got to make sure he doesn't slide through it. Doesn't look like he did. He didn't have to reverse back. So Bergstrom is currently not out of the final corner just yet, I don't believe. It looks like, actually, no, he is into the first corner. These cars are going to come out side by side here, and it looks like Bergstrom is going to have the advantage, but into the sweeper. Pecorini still closing the gap on exit, and Pecorini has closed down the gap to around 0.8 of a second by the time they break down into turn 4. So fantastic planning work from Pecorini, and that is going to put him within striking distance if he can set a couple of quick lap times and use the draft to his advantage on Alec Bergstrom.
But he's got cold tyres and probably cold brakes as well, Eduardo Pecorini, so he's going to have to put a lot of faith into that ABS system in that BMW. Now the question is, can Alec Bergstrom hold on? He's got a lap or so now, perhaps even just another half a lap from here, to try and put a little bit of distance between himself and Eduardo Pecorini. And the BMW is a huge crash behind us, and that looked to be, I can't tell you who it was, but it might have been Whitner, actually. It's Robbie Shin, I'm being told, and he spun around. I'm not sure whether it was another GT3 car or whether it was with a GT4 lapped traffic. Robert Schwenkler is into the pit lane, I can tell you that, for a stop in the GT4 class. Here is what's happened. It looks like it was with Josh Clogg, who's really having a difficult evening with lapped traffic. He's just about... Oh no, it's not Josh Clogg's fault at all. It's not really Robbie Shin's fault. He just lost the car, I'm afraid to say, and it was just rather unfortunate that Josh Clogg, my apologies, was just there. Here is another angle of it, I'm being told we're just getting, and it does look here as we see Robbie Shin. Watch him just make a little bit of a mistake on board. He just put a little bit too much throttle in, and it's unfortunate that as he oversteered, Josh Clogg was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. A rather blameless incident, unfortunately, as it's just one of those things that happens. As Pecorini goes around the outside, and Pecorini gets the move for the race lead, and he's through on Alec Bergstrom, and we just about missed that, unfortunately, watching that other incident. But Pecorini is through. Now the question is here, and this might be a little bit contentious, did he go off the track to make this move? Around the outside goes Pecorini, and he did take to the escape road, but the question, take to the runoff, but the question is, was he fully ahead by the time he did that? Did he gain a lasting advantage?
I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to see what happens when they get to these straightaways where a good spot for a car to get back by would be available, but Bergstrom has maintained that gap here into the final left-hander before the main straight. Bergstrom does get a nice exit, and he does have a run. He's going to get the draft on this run straightaway. I don't think it's over just yet as they come down the hill. Bergstrom is going to have a run, I would say, into turn 1, and if not, definitely going down into turn 4 once again. He has the draft. That gap continues to close there as these two head towards turn 1. It looks like he tries to peek to the inside, but he just isn't close enough here, and it looks like he overshot the corner. Yeah, he went a little bit deep.
Very deep.
Turn number 1, and he's lost a lot of time, and that is really going to hurt his shot here.
And I think, I'm not too sure whether he'll be saying that Pecorini went off the track to overtake him, because I'm sure Pecorini's argument will be, well, I have a certain amount of incident points that I'm allowed in a race, and if I have to go off track to make a move ever so slightly, it gives me an incident point, the same as if I went over the track off the track in any other context. So perhaps that's the defence there, and perhaps Pecorini's going to be okay. The question in the GT4 class, for those who are watching for GT4, is whether Michael Dillon or Robert Schwenkler is going to win this one. Dillon is going to have to pit any minute now. You would assume Schwenkler isn't going to, in the last 5 minutes, have any chance of catching up 20 seconds unless Dillon does come into the pits. But you have to say the time is starting to run out, really. Is Dillon going to try and stick this one out and just fuel save for his life?
I mean, he could pull that off, but I mean, if he only has to add 2 or 3 gallons to the tank, he could pull into the pits, only spending not that much time in there. And yes, he is going to have to pull into the pits there. As you can see him, there he comes up the hill. I'm going with, he's going to try and put as little fuel into the car as possible to try and just get in and out. He pulls into his pit stall there. And here's Robert Schwenkler coming down the main straight. It looks like Michael Dillon, he's on pit exit. He didn't take that much fuel. He's currently trying to exit the pits as Schwenkler is going to round turn 1 in the background here. Looks like Schwenkler ends up behind him, and Michael Dillon ends up with the lead on pit exit here. So pit stops deciding whether or not somebody can make a move yet again is theirs. Michael Dillon up the road, but currently head back to the GT3 class. Those two leaders are definitely Oh, excuse me. I think I underestimated what my standings were telling me. I thought they were much closer, about a tenth of a second, but Bergstrom still is trying to close that gap. And he's not giving up in this fight. It looks like he's still very close out of that corner. He really increased it, I thought. And I mean, it looks like he's going to get a better exit out of this corner. So it looks like Bergstrom will have another bite at the cherry here as they head into the final left-hander that these guys have to slow down for. He just needs a nice exit to try and just maintain pace. That's exactly what he's going to get as we go on board and onto the front bumper down this front straightaway. And this is where you'll see the gap start to close as the draft starts to kick in for this Mercedes here. Down the front straightaway, now up the hill. That gap really closing here. We have to see if Bergstrom, it looks like he isn't close to make a move, and he isn't going to make the same mistake twice. He brakes early enough to make the corner, but still maintains pace through turn 3, and now I think he's gonna have a shot into turn 4. He is close enough and he has the speed here. The draft is gonna start to kick in between these two cars. You can see the gap closing. It looks like it's just not close enough to make a move just yet. He's gonna have to wait till next lap, but I think next lap is gonna be the last one, so he doesn't have a lot of time.
It is currently the penultimate lap of the race indeed, so he's going to have to wait until that opportunity. Is Pecorini going to be able to hold on? He currently is going about it in the right way. I mean, the BMW isn't exactly a small car, and it's got a reputation of, well, BMW in general, of making pretty large and imposing cars. The question is, who's got the better straight line speed? Is it going to be the BMW, or is it going to be the Mercedes? Pecorini has fought so hard for this victory. Alex Bergstrom, who's made a slight mistake, it appears, might actually find himself struggling to get a good exit out of this final corner. You can see absolutely on the rails is that car. He is driving it within an inch of its life. Now down the pit straight for the final time. Is Bergstrom going to have the speed? 0.6 of a second is such a huge gap to try and pull out in the space of a straight, but Pecorini went onto the grass for a moment. That's lost him at least half a tenth, and Bergstrom is trying his best here. White flag is flying, and now down into the centre S's. This is where this is going to be decided.
Like Bergstrom trying to go for a better exit, and he does get it here down into turn number 3 here. I'm not sure if he's gonna have the run down this straight. He might have to try and get it during the technical section. He isn't close enough for the draft to help him down into turn number 4. He is gonna have to try and use these technical sections as best as he can. He throws the car in there, not close enough to get anything done there. And it looks like these cars still very even as they head into the second sector here. The most technical one, in fact, into turns number 6 and 7. Bergstrom still trying to close the gap. Pecorini just trying to hold on for a little bit longer into the first hairpin. It looks like, and into the second one as well. It looks like Pecorini still able to hold on. Bergstrom just trying to go for exit speed, I would think, as they head into the third hairpin and the final one for tonight at Interlagos. Bergstrom still not close enough to get anything done. It's going to either be up to the final break-in corner or the main straight here. Bergstrom has to try everything he can, but he's just right there. I don't think he's going to be close enough. 4/10 is a gap that we've seen. Doesn't really get you much down this front straightaway. We have to see what happens here. The gap is starting to close as the draft kicks in. And it looks like, ooh, Pecorini might have tapped. No, Pecorini has to pit. Pecorini has to pit. I'm not sure why he pitted, but that's going to... And it actually could have been a drive-through penalty for an amount of instance that he had to serve one way or another, and he ended up waiting till the final lap to do it, and that hands the win to Alex Bergstrom by just 0.2 of a second. And out of the final corner, Michael Dillon with the pit strategy is gonna get it done up the hill, and Michael Dillon stays consistent and wins in the GT4 class. And it's just, what a race from everybody. Wow.
There's a more pressing issue here, Alex, and that's the question of whether Josh Clogg is now going to feel a little bit hard done by in third position. Pecorini pit to serve his drive-through penalty, and essentially it's Silverstone with Michael Schumacher all over again, because Pecorini has not lost enough time that the penalty would have given him to Josh Clogg. So Josh Clogg is going to have to really have a proper question about that. As here is a battle between the two cars for third position in the class, and it looks like it's going to be the Mercedes that is going to get it in GT4. As actually, there's no Mercedes in GT4. As I thought it was weird, but there's an issue with our overlay here, and it was saying there was a photo finish, and I thought it was odd how much straight line speed that GT4 had. But anyway, I apologise for that, and I think it's an issue with iRacing trying to figure out the final sort of standings here as everyone crosses the line. But yes, that's going to be the issue, and I think that is going to be something that the race control admins and things have to have a look at, as to whether that is, even though it's allowed in the simulation, whether that's just a little bit cheeky from Pecorini, Alex.
Yeah, and I am speechless right now. I never thought that in a million years that we would have seen something like that, but actually I think Pecorini does end up losing a considerable amount of time according to the race results here, and Bergstrom is going to take the lead of the points with this with flying colors, and by taking the win after Pecorini pits to serve a drive-through, Clogg ends up getting second, Bobby Ross ends up going into the podium places in third, and Kerry Cantera ends up fourth. Eduardo Pecorini from this falls back to P5 in the race results. Chad Seep in sixth, Devin Brasher in seventh, Frank Appa in eighth, Patrick Cobb in 9th, Robbie Shin in 10th, Jaden Darling in 11th, and Michael Dalling with the pit strategy, 12th overall, but he wins the day in the GT4 class in his Porsche, I believe, and ends up winning the GT4 class and for the GT4 standings. Robert Schwenkler beat by pit strategy here tonight to end up second. Paul Mikolajczyk gets the final podium spot in third, Jerry DiPiero in fourth, Glenn McTavish takes the final top 5 spot after an epic battle with Grant Turner, who ends up 6th, Rob Neville in 7th, and Jimmy Howard, who I'm not sure started the race, rounds out the field in 8th position. And with that, what do you say we get to some interviews if we have people waiting in line here?
Alex Bergstrom first up. And if you don't mind, Alex, I'll ask Alec a question first. As Alec, a race win in the end, but in the most dramatic of fashion. Even it's confusing me, as I don't think you quite expected that. Pecorini pulling into the pits to serve a drive-through at the very last opportunity. Surely that must have been wildly confusing for you.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but yeah, that was super confusing. I saw him pull to the left to go into the pits, and I thought maybe he hit that incident limit or something happened, but you know, I definitely feel for the guy. That's happened to me before. Never, not kind of for the win, but I feel for him.
And well, in terms of that, it's 2 races on the bounce, and it's a championship where, in the first 2 rounds, we thought actually Pecorini looks like he's going to absolutely run away with it. He had that dominant performance in Imola. He wasn't looking back in Barber. And all of a sudden, you've won 2 on the trot, and, well, by my reckoning, you should be close to equaling his points. So you must think, actually, I've got a chance here.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm hoping to give him some challenge down the road. Those first 2 races, I wasn't able to make the second one. I think that's what put me down to start with. But that first race, Barber, not really my best track. The last 2 have probably been 2 of my more favorite tracks on the iRacing service, so hopefully I can keep it up these next couple, but it's going to be tough. Got some good competition out there.
And, well, unless Alex has got any questions, I think we'll let you go and enjoy your surprise win.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for joining us, Alec Bergstrom. That's the class winner in GT3, and the winner overall. And next up is a winner who actually was rather a surprise to all of us. And Michael, I think it's fair to say you didn't really have the pace of Robert today, but you've just pulled the wool over his eyes in the pit stops. That must have been a pretty satisfying strategy to pull off.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I just couldn't catch up with Robert realistically on the track. I mean, I was matching him at times on lap times, but I just couldn't close the gap enough. And when I saw him take as long as he did in the pits, I was like, wonder what he was up to. But anyway, I'm not going to complain. Really happy with that.
well, you're the first winner of the season, actually, who isn't Robert or Adam. Of course, Adam's not racing today. And perhaps a bit of momentum building for yourself in the Porsche?
Well, hopefully. Who knows? Who knows?
And, well, thank you very much for joining us. And enjoy the race win, because a testament to how sometimes not having the pace can be made up for in a race. Very well done to you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
And he was laughing at something there, Michael. I'm not too sure what.
Giggling at his old friend Adam Thompson, who was running cameras for us and wasn't able to run tonight. So, anyways, that's gonna do it for us. But before we end off the stream, our next broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, tomorrow night we will have 2 streams going on at once. You're not going to want to miss either of them. First up, the one starting at 9 p.m. EST is WSRL, which is LMP2s and GT3 cars. That's going to be at the Daytona Road Course. You're not going to want to miss that event. That's going to be a heck of a show. At 9:10 p.m. EST tomorrow night as well, AMS in the Mustang FR500s goes back to Mount Panorama, which is an amazing race for those guys. So stick around for that one for sure. And Thursday night at 9:15 p.m. EST, we have the Spec 5 World Tour, which is the Mazda MX-5s at Sebring, which those guys always put on a show. You're going to want to make sure you stand up for that one. And Sunday night, XSLR returns for the second race in the Dirt Sprint Winged 410 leg. The Dirt Oval leg at 8:10 p.m. EST at Knoxville there for those guys, which is, judging off of Bristol, I think we're bound to have a great race there, especially for the sprint cars at Knoxville. So, with that being said...
Hang on. This one, we're going to run over just a little bit on time, because I do want to drag Robert Schwenkler in here and ask him what in the hell happened on your pit strategy, Rob.
Well, I thought I nailed it, but I had to come in earlier than I thought for the second stop because I wouldn't have had enough to get back around. I would have been sputtering through the pits, and I didn't want to chance it. And then timing-wise, I came out in front of the GT3 leaders, and I didn't want to interfere with their battle, so I tried to get out of the way, and it slowed me down. I think it just, all that combined gave enough of a gap for Michael to dive in and get ahead of me, and there was no time left to catch him after that. So
yeah, we kind of noticed that too with Eduardo Pecorini and Alec Bergstrom. Alec elected to come in, and Eduardo had to fight through some GT4 traffic on his end lap on the first stop, and it really did hinder Eduardo's run. And Alec got out way far, about the same amount that Michael got ahead of you, but. Kind of explain to us here about, we always think about the slower cars hindering the faster cars, but you guys also have to take into consideration during your pit laps that you've got these faster GT3s coming up, so really it kind of hinders both classes at some point.
Yeah, I mean, just being aware of what's going on, I think, like I said, I didn't want to interfere. I saw Pecco and I think Alec were battling when they came up behind me, and I didn't want to be the cause of anything between them. I wanted to keep their race clean, so I just tried to get out of the way. And, it's just the nature of multi-class racing,
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's unfortunate. It sucks for me, but, I'll take P2. It could be a lot worse.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I also wanted to drag you in here because, we've been talking about the standings all night and watching me up there in the lead. I think that may have just been shifted, and the battle between you and Michael actually heating up a little bit. What are you expecting going into the next race here at COTA? 90 minutes? You have some confidence, or have you been scoping Michael out at all on it so far yet?
I have not been scoping Michael out. I know the track pretty well. It's my home track. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious to see what the longer race length, what kind of curveballs that throws people. But I'm looking forward to it. I think Michael and I will have a good battle the rest of the season, unless you decide to show up again.
Well, I hope I can. I want to be down there with you guys, but I also love being up here broadcasting it. Rob, anybody you want to thank? You want to shout out for your second place, which I'm going to tell you should have been first tonight.
Thanks. Yeah, big shout out to everybody that showed up tonight. I think generally we had some pretty good, clean racing, so shout out to all the guys. Shout out to you guys for the awesome broadcasts. My girlfriend Frankie for putting up with my hobby, and any friends, family watching. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support. Looking forward to next week.
All right.
Or next race, I should say.
That was Robert Schwenkler there. I'll go ahead and hand it over to the guys that should actually be commentating right now. Sorry, Alex, but I had to ask the question.
No, no problem. But
Adam not pulling any punches there, was he, on Robert? Making sure he knew that he had, in fact, lost the race. But I'll hand it over to you, Alex, to round out the stream. No final thoughts from me.
All right, well, I mean, I just thought that was an absolutely fantastic race with a lot of surprises there, so I would say a great race from the XTC guys once again. And 2 weeks from now, we will see you guys again for the hour-and-a-half long Circuit of the Americas race for the Cross Touring Cup. But for now, my name is Alex Andersen. I have been joined in the commentary booth by Tom Dillon with Adam Thompson running cameras, and have a good night, everyone.
Oh, stand by. Oh, nope, I'm still hot.